Hi, welcome back. This is the second part of a webinar that highlights a presentation that I'm giving tomorrow at the third annual Autism Conference on dealing with the challenges of raising a child with autism. And if you recall, I had highlighted 12 different challenges that I've put together. We have already gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're through therapy. And each challenge can be very complex, costly, confusing. So we are about to deal with the sixth one, which is education. So education can be very complicated and confusing. There are a lot of decisions to make, and there's no perfect choice. One question to ask yourself is, do I want a public program or a private program? My son went to public school, but I saw a lot of people thrive in a private environment where there was more hands-on and smaller classes and more understanding of the disability. So it's up to you, but that's one trade-off. In high school, you can decide between a diploma or a completion certificate. Again, that's up to you. My son did a diploma. It's a lot more work to do a diploma, so it has to do with how your child works in that environment. And so again, that's something to consider. Colleges, there are community colleges, state colleges, universities. My son and a lot of his friends started off at community college, took a slow pace in getting started and then transfer. Transferring is easier. You don't have to take the SAT. So it's a simpler path. Other people have chosen to go right into the university. So it really has to do with the threshold that your child could handle. I know people that have sent their children to private colleges. Some weren't interested in college and chose a trade school. A lot of the community colleges are offering certifications. So deciding how your child is going to complete school is a choice you need to make. Funding, Department of Rehab will help fund college. I know people that have had tuition and books, etc., paid for by Department of Rehab. We have chosen not to. One, they require that you take a full course load in order to get refunded, and for our son that's impossible. He can only handle 2 classes, but it can be part of a ticket to work program. When you do go to school, make sure that you have contact with the disability office, that you understand tutoring. You may want to choose on-campus living, and there's some on-campus living options like at Orange Coast College, there's the College Living Experience, which simulates a dorm life in apartments for kids with disability. So these are all things to think about with college, what major, etc., is going to lead to employment. For us, we chose college for our son, one, because we wanted him to mature, we wanted to make friends, and we wanted him to have a career path. So for us, we chose a college path, but not everybody does. Now, in terms of the next issue is psychology. There were different phases in our son's life where we definitely needed psychological professionals. Obviously, to get a diagnosis at the beginning. Josh went back and we found a therapist when he was in middle school. We were dealing with sexuality issues, and then we had anger management issues. After doing the peers program, we again had a psychologist, and Josh went on some medications. So different phases, you need to pull in professionals. Some of the key issues that we've seen with emotional or behavioral issues are dealing with anxiety, which is very high for our group. Depression is a common problem, especially when they're isolated. Anger, OCD is an issue that they're troubled with. Maybe they're having trouble attending, and sexuality concerns. And there's a session today with David Monkarsh on sexuality. So kind of related is social skills. This is probably something you've been working on with your child all along. They tend to have problems with conversations. They don't know how to interact with peers. They may be dealing with peer rejection, neglect. So these are all issues. For our son, we chose the Peers program, and this was developed by UCLA. It's a proven program. It's a 14-week program with parent participation. I know that the Center for Autism also offers a social skills program, but having social relationships is critical. So let's talk about relationships. There are a lot of relationships in your child's life. There's a relationship with you, and I already talked about parenting and the importance of establishing relationships early. There's siblings, and having good relationships with siblings can be so helpful in the long term for your child. And your extended family, whether it's your sisters and brothers, etc., having those relationships are very helpful. Having friends, both you having friends and your child having friends, are extremely important. And then you have the relationships with the professionals. So these are all relationships that you need to have in place. One way that the Peers program encourages for people to meet people is through clubs. And it was actually when Josh was in the Peers program, I was starting up a Toastmaster club at work, and I realized what better club to join than Toastmasters, as Toastmasters really deals with the deficits that our children have in terms of communication and social interaction. So 7 years ago, I established this Gavel Club. We are blooming. We have close to 20 active members, and it's a great environment for them to learn public speaking. A typical agenda is about an hour and a half. We have 3 to 4 prepared speeches that are 5 to 7 minutes that each of the young adults provide. There's some impromptu speaking, there's evaluations and snacks, and this group has started to get together and have social activities after the meeting. Marcia Stein is a son. Richard was on our board, and he had a PhD from Stanford, so very bright guy, but he had nervousness speaking, and this is what Marcia said: our son Richard has benefited greatly from his participation in the Gavel Club and his service on the Orange County Asperger Board. The Gavel Club has enhanced his public speaking skill, bolstered his confidence in social interaction, and increased his communication skills more generally. So we talked about communication skills. There are a lot of life skills that, in order to get your child to an adult, you need to help them develop. We'll talk more about careers, but being able to work is important. Being able to advocate for yourself. One of the things that I was thrilled to see Josh be able to do was advocate for himself in college. When he started the Real People program, he wanted to get credit for it, and he had to chase down the chairman of the department and convince him to let Josh get credit for the Real People program. So being able to advocate is very critical. We do it a lot for our children, but we need to teach our children to do it themselves. Health and safety, being able to know how to go to the doctors, know how to make a dental appointment, know how to do all those things. Safety, being able to be aware of dangers, whether it's physical dangers or safety issues with meeting people, etc., social dangers are really critical. Being able to maintain peer relationships, being able to engage in the community. Maybe right now our son is volunteering at Greenpeace. Just learning skills of participating in the community is a skill in itself. Dealing with finances, knowing how to write a check, knowing how to pay with credit cards, knowing how to use an ATM, some sense of budgeting. These are all important skills. Transportation, first maybe taking the bus. Josh used to take the bus, then he advanced to taking the train. He used to take the train to LA and then take the bus. And then finally he learned how to drive. It took him 4 years to do it, but he learned how to drive. Learning how to enjoy your life, participate in recreation activities, whatever that is, but those are important for a happy life. And just regular living skills at home, doing the laundry, cooking, cleaning. Those are all important skills for our adults to have. A couple little stories. One, my son, who's will be moving out next year after he graduates, has come to us and said, hey, listen, Mom, before I do that, I really want to work on some of my life skills. I want to understand how you do things. He has a sense of that there's mortality issues, not that we're going to die or anything, but that could happen. And he wants to feel a sense of security that he'll be safe on his own. Okay, I've been promising you we'll talk about career. Let's talk about career. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Finding a job for someone on the autism spectrum is difficult. There are 1 in 59 now with autism, so the group is growing. And there's 1.5 million people today who have autism, and 50,000 are entering the workforce every year. Only 58% of the people with autism find work after high school, so that means 42% don't. And unemployment nationwide is 90%. Just honing in on my group, here's some numbers. The good news is, compared to nationwide, we saw 63% unemployment. We saw 53% unemployment, or 63 unemployment. But these little faces tell you a story here. Of the people working, 18% weren't really thrilled with what they're doing. A lot of people are underemployed. Maybe they're only working 16 hours a week. Maybe it's not something that they particularly enjoy. And 31% never ever worked. So you can see that employment is a challenge in Orange County. I want to give you some hope. And one of the things that's happening worldwide is something called Autism at Work. Many companies are establishing some hiring programs for people on the spectrum. And these are all companies that do it. Maybe an internship program. It may be a full employment program. We talked about Richard Stein earlier. Richard Stein was hired through Microsoft's Autism at Work program. And they went through a week they had tests, they went through a week interview, and they have been hiring people on the spectrum. The Autism at Work program is not something that's formulaic. Every company does it differently, but they have gathered together as a community. They have an annual summit, they do roundtables, they have a playbook to help companies establish Autism at Work programs. I am personally part of the Orange County Transition Initiative. This is a countywide initiative to deal with employment and other concerns. It's not just for the autistic population, it's for people with other disabilities, as well as those that have been incarcerated. So it's to help those get on track. But it has participation from all the agencies, from the schools, from nonprofits like my own. and it's designed to help focus on employment. And I am part of the business part outreach program. I am co-chair, and our initiative this year is to expand autism at work into Orange County. So if your company might be interested in participating, let me know. A little bit more about careers is, there's education, there are private programs to help you find work. For example, New Vista Career has a program where they work with kids on their job interest, help them with resumes, actually have an internship with Smart and Final. There's certification programs in the community college. Regional Center will help find placement. They now have a paid internship program, which my son is participating in with his activity at Real People, where they'll pay up to $10,000 in a year for a paid internship. So you can go to a company, get them hired, have them do a paid internship, and they can test it out and then hopefully hire them. Project Search is another program that has 11-month internships with a variety of different organizations. They work with CHOC, they work with UCI Medical. They're currently working on a program with Kaiser Permanente. So that's another source. Real People we discussed. Jimmy Lifton is starting a new class, so if you want to contact him, there's the phone number. Regional Center will also fund job coaches. If you do not qualify for Regional Center, there's Department of Rehab. They offer on-the-job training. They offer summer employment program, a variety of things. So if you're interested in career, get familiar with the services provided by these organizations. Okay, I wanted to share with you a little video about autism at work that I thought you might find interesting.
Ever since I was 6 years old, I felt that I was different.
People notice I don't do things the same way as them.
Most autistic people have anxiety. We think that we mess stuff up and we kind of try and overcorrect.
I process my senses in a different way. So any kind of sensory input is very intense for me.
Whenever I hear conversations or very high-pitched sounds, that's very distressing for me.
I was told from a young age that people that were like me wouldn't go anywhere in life. I was put in different facilities, told that I wasn't going to be as smart as other people.
Before I joined JP Morgan Chase, I struggled to stick in the same job. I never felt in any of my previous jobs that I was utilizing my full potential.
There's a lot of strength in this specific neurological profile. Here in JP Morgan, I make reports and they help to make assessments about how much people we need or how are they performing.
I work for quality assurance. I'm good at figuring out how branching paths would work if I ran this, if I ran that.
I work in the wholesale client onboarding department. My teammates really appreciate that I have a really good memory for procedures and figures.
Working at JP Morgan has been a high point of my life. I enjoy working here and it has helped me pursue more goals in my life.
My managers are very proud of the work I'm doing. A project that I've been working on, it's been currently used around the world and that feels really, really good.
The Autism at Work program changed my life, and I would love for every autistic person to have the opportunities I've had here.
So that should give you a little bit of hope. So we're on to the next one, financial. And clearly having employment or career is part of your child having some financial stability in their life. We talked about SSI and SSDI. That's a way of also supplementing their income. Let's talk about, we're going to talk a little bit about ABLE accounts. And ABLE accounts are a way to complement the sources of money for your child's daily living, and I'll go over that a little bit. Special needs trust and life insurance. Just real quick, I'll do a little bit more about special needs trust, but life insurance is something that you might want to look into if you're worried about leaving enough money for your child. This is a way of making sure that your child is cared for after you go. So an ABLE account, I am actually experienced with an ABLE account. I set up Josh's ABLE account about 4 years ago. It wasn't available in California, but it is now. Basically, there needs to be a designated beneficiary. The beneficiary is someone with a disability. And through these type of accounts, which are kind of like a 529 educational account, you can contribute up to $15,000 annually for them to use. That $15,000 can come all from you. It can come from other people. It doesn't have to be from one single person. It's only cash. It's not property or anything. And it's done with after-tax money. Now, with money in that ABLE account, you can pay for qualified disability expenses, such as rent, or you can pay for health or some other ways of improving quality of life. They're not, the money is tax exempt, so when they pull from that, there's no taxes to be paid, and the money earned are exempt from taxation, or the distributions for the qualified disability expenses are exempt from taxes, and but non-QDE distributions are taxable. So let me explain to you how I use this. Josh wanted to move out. We wanted to give him a dorm experience. The dorm obviously cost a significant amount of money. And in order to pay for it, we didn't want Josh to lose some of his SSI benefits. What we did was set up an ABLE account, and the dorm was paid for out of the ABLE account. So that way, he did not lose any SSI money, and we were able to pay for the dorm. Now, we talked a little bit about life insurance. Josh received $1,000 in life insurance from my sister-in-law when she passed away. So we were able to take money from that and pay into the ABLE account to pay for Josh's dorm. So then another thing that you need to plan for is having a special needs trust. This is a way for when you go to leave your inheritance to your child without having it affect the child's benefit. There are no payback requirements. You can leave money to whoever you want. And there are two types of trusts. There are revocable and irrevocable. Revocable trusts are typically what you set up. Those can be changed throughout. Then there's irrevocable trusts. We used an irrevocable trust when trying to get Josh under that $2,000 amount to get SSI initially. So the situation was he had bar mitzvahs, there were savings, and so we took that money and we set up a irrevocable trust and put that money in the trust, and therefore it didn't count as an asset for Josh. Another thing about setting up the trust is I had mentioned that my sister-in-law passed away. We informed her about the trust, and she actually left her 401k to Josh in the trust. So that's actually how we were able to fund the ABLE account each year, is that he gets a mandatory distribution each year. That money goes directly into the ABLE account, and that's how we pay for his living expenses. So we've actually gone through all 12 of these challenges, and I'm hoping you are feeling that they're possible to, with the knowledge, support, and resources, that you can do it. Before we conclude, I want to get you focused on what your plan is. So I want you to sit down and I want you to figure out what are your goals for next year. Pick 5 things, prioritize it. You are not going to be able to do everything. Each one of these takes something like 9 months to do, a lot of research and complexity. But I want you to look through this list and pick the 5 priorities, goals for this next year. You may want to pause to give yourself time. Okay, and then what is the next step? So you're going to leave this webinar. I want you to have in mind, what are you going to do next? So looking at the goals, what is your next step plan? So maybe you think the big issue is social skills, you want to find a peers program. Maybe the issue is SSI, you want to find a contact to help you with SSI, or maybe the issue is you don't have a special needs trust, you need to find a trust attorney. So just go through that and fill that out. And here are my final words of advice. Don't do this alone. Join a support group. Find other people who are going through this and share your experiences. Don't try to do everything. Prioritize your goals. You're going to get overwhelmed. Reach out to people, get referrals, find out what other people have done. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. Start today. Time can disappear from you very quickly, and stay focused. Make a list every week of what you're going to get done. And just like my husband and I, at the end of the year, celebrate your success. I want to thank you. And if you have questions, just email them to me at judy.utah@cox.net. Thank you very much for joining me.